And finally, we have Mr. Saktiandi.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I think like what Mr. Morali has mentioned, I think it's a great honor to be the last speaker, but I think Mr. Morali has done a great justice in terms of trying to wrap up some of the points made by other members. I'm not sure whether I'll try to keep it brief or try to keep it on point, but
brief
essentially,
is always good.
I find that the budget takes a very detailed approach to the challenges that Singapore will face in the next 5 years, and the Finance Minister has scrutinized the various revenue platforms and carefully considered how best we should manage this against our expenditure, especially on building the infrastructure necessary for the future and the rising expenditure on healthcare and security. The hallmark of this government has always been to plan ahead, including this time around providing forward guidance on its fiscal plans. Based on the past 2 days' debate, and I think it has also led to a healthy discussion on our fiscal sustainability and reserve adequacy as well. I think this is an important issue to lay bare, in particular for a small and open economy such as Singapore, as huge amounts of money come in and out of Singapore all the time. This is of benefit to us, especially as a financial center, but it can bring with it risks that we need to buffer for, so as not to take risks leading to major job losses. And I think that's the penultimate key issue, the job losses that might arise from this. And after yesterday's debate, I was looking at statistics overnight, for example, to put things in perspective. Based on 2016 data, Singapore's foreign direct investment stock is Sing dollar $1.4 trillion. This is quite substantial. This is no fun and games. This is a huge amount. If there is a loss of confidence or catastrophe, and let's say 30% only of the FDI pulls out, it will wipe out 400 billion Sing dollars. And we should note that MAS's official foreign reserves is only $370 billion, and this is just 30% of the foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment, if I may define, is actually the amount of investments by foreign multinational companies or foreign multinational enterprises investing in Singapore. So this $400 billion, or Sing $400 billion, is what actually lifts Singapore's shores, and we will need money to rebuild for jobs if this pulls out. And I remind again, this is only 30% of that FDI number. So we are fortunate to have a good team handling our reserves, and they have been able to secure good returns from year to year to supplement our reserves. So I must, at this point, congratulate them and the Ministry of Finance for an excellent job. The point made by Ms. Quick yesterday in her speech about being pragmatic and shifting from being pragmatism, moving away from idealism, I think this point that I shared just now in terms of statistics, so being pragmatic today is actually quite important, so that tomorrow's kids can have a space to realize their dreams and ideals. So I think that's an important point I want to share today from that perspective. I'm glad also with the Finance Minister's assurance in his speech that we need to take the right approach to have future generations, in part, bear financial responsibility for infrastructure projects that are built for future needs. So at this juncture, Mr. Speaker, please bear with me and trying to share a bit in terms of using a localized version of the island parable sketched by the late American economist Paul Samuelson of MIT to set a context about the overlapping generational issues that we face before my comments and questions later on. So let's assume we have this island which is home to unusually tall rambutan trees. Samuelson uses cocoa trees, and I'm using rambutan trees here to give a localized version. And also hungry people, one young and one old generation, and little else. The rambutan trees are our surpluses and reserves, and the fruits are our returns from our reserves. The trees reflect the island's strong fundamentals. So the young among the people would climb the trees and pick the fruits, and take note that the fruit must be eaten quickly before it's spoiled by the hot weather. The older people are physically incapable to climb and pick the fruit. Neither could they buy fruit from the young, as they have nothing to offer in exchange. So if the elders had saved the fruit from their youth, it won't work. The stockpile would have rotted with the passage of time. So the solution, the young gives to the old the fruit they pick, and in return, the next generation will do the same for them when they too grow old. Thus, the young sort of pays it forward. This also serves as a link between two generations. The scheme works, Samuelson pointed out, only because new generations are always coming along. I will pause at this moment and say this is maybe an oversimplified world I'm painting, but the same core values and principles have been applied to Singapore, in Singapore. So past and current generations always looking forward and thinking about the future and caring for the less fortunate. In Singapore's context, things have evolved with practical policies introduced in the past 50 years. Our young can acquire a durable asset, say a HDB flat, and our government buy reserve assets and can replant half the rambutan trees, rambutan fruits or seeds to grow more rambutan trees. At a future date, they sell this to cash out and take care of themselves. Thus, when the young get older, they can rent or sell the HDB flat to the next generation. In most cases, this kind of savings and investing does far better to serve the people. Capital accumulation enlarges the economy's productive capacity, thereby creating wealth. Saving and investing both store value and add to it, turning one rambutan fruit into a whole tree. Retirees can therefore expect to get more out of their investment than they put in. Not to mention other long-term initiatives that we already have built up over the years, such as CPF and Elder Shield for future retirement and healthcare needs. So, Minister, my first question is related to the fruits from the replanting of the trees, the rambutan trees. We should make sure we continue to plant more rambutan trees and not go down the path of eating too much rambutans. In fact, we should have a balanced diet. Our NRIC or rambutans when we can find other sources of food or tax revenue. After all, too much rambutan may not be good for us. We can get a sore throat. Besides, even when we take other sources of food from other plantations or trees, we have consistently taken care of those plantations with fertilizers and tender loving care via offsets and other measures to ensure all is well and more fruits and produce can be produced in the future. So back to my first question, Minister, will the trees continue to bear fruits at a rate we need? Can we and future generations continue to plant trees even as some of the older trees wither and die? It would be good too if Minister could say whether or not we can continue to expect such returns from GIC, MAS and Temasek in the next few years or decades. And if this is achievable, then perhaps there could be a chance for the proposed GST hike to be deferred to a later date. I wholeheartedly agree that it is important to save for rainy days and keep a substantial reserve. I'm glad that the government is looking at ways to address the overlapping generation usage of our future infrastructure, especially in the next economic phase of Singapore. This budget is a good start. In particular, the issue about optimal financing and that the user pays. Rather than just building up funds now for future IPs or infrastructure projects, I'm glad that the budget highlighted efforts to fund IPs by a debt structure to finance construction of infrastructure. In principle, under such a debt structure, the cost of funding the IPs should be amortized over time, so each generation pays for the benefits they get from using the IP. So in our case, it may be useful to earmark a certain amount of reserves or NRIC to use to guarantee the bonds or borrowings for an infrastructure project. To segment spending for infrastructure projects and other expenditures in our budget explicitly will give taxpayers a better picture on where their money is going to and how they will benefit from it. This, in fact, is a feedback from one of my residents, trying to give a better picture of where the money is spent and how it will benefit and usage of reserves as well. So the key word here is earmark for the guarantee to lower the financing costs. But the returns from the infrastructure project must make sense. If future users cannot afford to pay, lenders can tap on that collateral and assume ownership for it. So for example, in the context of the rambutan story, build a fence around one rambutan tree and use that as collateral to borrow money to construct the bridge to the next island. So we can build more rambutan trees there and not sell the rambutan tree. So we can use the toll for the bridge to the next island to eventually pay for the bridge. Most importantly, the future users of that bridge will pay for the bridge. No need to chop down the rambutan tree. As mentioned in the budget speech, borrowing arrangements for statutory boards and government-owned companies which build infrastructure would form one part of the solution for funding large investments. However, contingent liability is a potential future issue that must be taken into account given the unpredictable nature of the global economy and the financial markets. So it's an issue and concern I have. Contingent liabilities could build up for future generations, affecting the ability to obtain funds in future. Does the ministry see an issue in the build-up of contingent liabilities for future generations? Moving ahead, we will also have to evaluate how a GST increase in the near future would impact on the lower income and middle income groups. If GST is to be increased, how much of it is expected to be plowed back to reach those in need? Will more resources be pumped into existing assistance schemes to mitigate the impact of rising living costs? It will be prudent to explore means to collect the revenue efficiently and quickly and fairly allocated to reduce further inequalities. Furthermore, as the government moderates the pace of various ministries' budget growth and looks out for ways to be more efficient and effective, there will be decision inflection points with trade-offs at the margins. I'm concerned if some of the decision points and trade-offs may lead to reduced spending in specific areas of education and skills training, in particular, the IT segment of the student population. They constitute about 25% of the post-secondary cohort each year and are a significant future labor force with key skill sets for us to be future ready. I have visited and met students and staff of IT as part of Yayasan Mendaki's Future Ready Unit's efforts to enhance the awareness of younger generation about being future ready and to instill importance of skills future and lifelong learning. Without a doubt, the government has provided excellent support and resources to IT. In the last 25 years, IT has made tremendous progress to provide skills training for full-time students and CET skills upgrade for in-service workers. Recently, IT had made further advancement by providing new upgrading pathways for its alumni and in-service workers through a program called Work-Learn Technical Diploma, WLTD, which is a path towards higher certification through apprenticeship model. Another IT program, which is in my view is excellent, is the Global Education Program, or GEP. This program provides IT students with a holistic education by exposing them to new skills, global mindsets and perspectives, and a better understanding of the culture and lifestyle in other countries. It has proven to be life-changing for some of the students, impactful, especially those who come from humble backgrounds. So I hope the government will ensure that the support for programs like those in ITE, and for example, programs like the IT Work-Learn Technical Diploma and the Global Education Program will not be affected, and future demands for development resources will continue to be given to ITE. This is even more important in Singapore's next phase of development, where skills meritocracy is essential. Another resource that I hope will not be affected are the financial assistance support for IT students. More than 50% of IT students qualify for some form of financial assistance, and they generally come from diverse, challenging backgrounds. The application and checks because of means testing can be very onerous for these families, so the IT schemes allows more direct assistance to the students and their families. I do hope that trade-offs from the reduction in the budget growth do not lead to reductions in the IT opportunity funds, for example. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a progressive budget that seeks to prepare Singapore to cope with significant future expenditure growth. The government is clearly seeking solutions to do so without putting too much burden on the current generation, and this effort should be lauded. And I hope there will be no more rambutan trees being cut. Sir, I support the budget. Thank you.